Son. Superboy Prime breaks reality yet again. Twice. All right, here's the thing, man, right? So Superboy Prime came back a month ago. I'm a little behind on that one, but the newest issue just dropped. Let's get into these two comics, right? So the last one picks up with kind of this discussion on Superman and this huge revelation. There are these two individuals that we can't really see, and they're talking about him, right? They say Superman, the man of tomorrow, the greatest superhero of all time, and he poses as this Clark Kent guy. What's he hiding, right? And that's what this person's told. Do not be fooled. He must use that persona to trick his enemies into a false sense of security. It would be a mistake to underestimate him. And that's what the question's asked. Why? Because he has powers? Big whoop. We've got powers too. Lots of them. But this person's told it's more than that. On this world, he inspires people to follow him. His influence spreads far into the future to other worlds. They see him and they hope to be like him, to be better. And that's where a third person chimes in and they say it's like he's the epicenter of everything our master hates. I guess we should thank him. Now we know who to take out first. And so what this does is it picks up with Superman traveling back to Smallville. Now at that moment, he actually pulls out his old Legion of Superheroes ring, which for those of you guys who are familiar with Superman lore, way back before Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Superboy stories became their most popular when he was part of the Legion of Superheroes, right? Basically, superheroes from the 30th, 31st century that modeled themselves after Superman, or at least were inspired by Superman to kind of take over the torch, take over the mantle, and usher in a new era for humanity and even the universe as a whole. It was a pretty awesome concept. Now, one of the things that is talked about here, and we do kind of have to discuss this for a second before we jump into Superboy Prime, is Validus. Now, Validus is an old school character from the old Adventure comics. Issue number 352, I think, is when he first showed up. But basically, he is this guy who's more powerful than Superman is, right? He's stronger than Superman for the most part. The events of 0 Hour Crisis in Time kind of made a whole bunch of things finagly. The important thing is this. During the Summer of Superman one-shot special, Validus showed up 3 times in Superman's lifetime. And seemingly, he appeared, he fought Superman, and then left. Superman didn't understand where he went to, except for the fact that he seemed to be trapped between moments, almost kind of like frozen in time, and the fact that he would just disappear. There was no understanding why he was there in the first place. But the reason why I bring that up will become important later on in this video, so kind of keep that in the back of your head. But one of the things this does is that while he's there visiting Ma and Pa Kent, he's met by the arrival of Imra, also known as Saturn Girl. Now, again, because of his time with the Legion of Superheroes, he's well aware of who Saturn Girl is. But what's crazy about this is she has a Darkseid symbol on her chest, an Omega symbol. And so when he addresses her as Imra, her statement, "No one's called me by that name since I threw my parents into the murder pits of Metropolis." And she says, "Interesting, you have strong mental barriers. You've been trained." And she says, "I'm here to understand why Darkseid sees you as a threat." Now, here's one of the things to know. Imra is a very, very powerful telepath. One of the most powerful telepaths in DC Comics. But the fact that she mentions Darkseid immediately puts Superman on guard. Because, of course, it's Darkseid. There's no real way to defeat him. And this is when the story immediately takes off. Because in that moment, she just kind of says, "Okay, right, I can sense your synapses firing as you're figuring it all out." And he asks, "Well, then who are you if you're not the Imra that I know?" And she says, "I'm exactly who you think I am. Saturn Girl from the Moon Titan from the 31st century. And she's like, "I can see that your mind is close, but I don't think I would say corrupted. More like I was inspired by Darkseid." And she even goes so far as to tell him, right, Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad, 2 individuals who are part of the Legion of Superheroes, they're close by. And what you find out is they're at the Justice League Watchtower, right? And literally Lightning Lad asks him, he says, "Are you going to use your magnetic powers to rip it apart, sending those metal pieces flying into space, watch the bodies freeze to death?" And the response of Cosmic Boy, "No, that's not going to happen. What I'm actually going to do instead is crush this place." And with his power over magnetism, he crushes the entire Justice League Watchtower and kills everyone inside. They're all dead. Just like that, right? They're all obliterated. Literally, Superman tells Mr. Terrific, right? Can you hear me? Get everybody out now. And he's like, it's too fast. There's nothing we can do. And at that moment, he's just kind of like, that's a new record. Like, honestly, I thought at least a few could have made it out alive. And Superman, of course, races off to confront him, just cold cocks this guy. And that's when he realizes that it's not just the Justice League they're going after. They're going after everybody else because they come back down, right? Lightning Lad comes to Earth and attacks Ma Kent and kills her. Right, kills her on the spot. And Superman is like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Only for him to realize none of it's actually happening. It's all an illusion created in his head by Saturn Girl. That's how powerful she is. And she says, most people would crack right about now. The horror breaks their mental frontal lobe defenses, but not you. You're still pushing against my powers. I'll just have to push harder. And so she literally walks him through his life. And I told you guys what was going on with Darkseid's Legion when they first showed up in DC Comics. I saw the comments. None of you guys wanted to believe me. You guys told me I was full of crap. You said, Rob, you're just making stuff up. Some of your kooky theories. No. I was right, because literally she says, I see that you had a crush on me once. That's cute. And that's where Superman says, not you. I don't know who you are, but you are not the Imra that I know, the Saturn Girl that I know. And she says, the Legion really meant something to you, didn't they? You believe in hope, in this world, in people. And it's not an act, it's real. You are truly Darkseid's opposite. But I'm here to tell you something. Nothing you do matters. Nothing you ever did matters. Every single life you've saved was meaningless. You were there when Darkseid ascended. You thought it was his death, but it was the beginning of his transformation. Where I'm from, Darkseid is the past, present, and future. Darkseid is. She's from the absolute universe. And I told you guys that's what was happening. I told you guys when the Legion of Superheroes, right, when Darkseid's Legion showed up to confront Time Trapper Doomsday, they're from the absolute universe. And nobody wanted to believe me. Right? Nobody wanted to believe me, but I told you guys, it's true. This story's fantastic. And so literally she asks, now what to do with you? How about I just lock you away and watching your mother die over and over again? Because that sounds fun. And trust me, it's a better fate than what Darkseid has planned for his return. But that's when Time Trapper Doomsday shows up here. Now, for those of you guys who are not familiar with him, right, the idea here is that, as most of you guys know, Doomsday always comes back. Right? No matter what it was that killed Doomsday, he will return every single time. And this is kind of the final form of Doomsday, for lack of a better word. He's at the very end of all reality, and he can manipulate time. And he initially showed up here earlier in the Superman run and told Superman to join him. Otherwise, there were going to be all kinds of terrible things that would happen, and eventually his hand would be forced. These are the kind of things he's talking about. And so when that happens, because Superman is really kind of in a state of shock, recovering mentally from everything that's happened, Time Trapper basically whisks him away. And in that moment, Saturn Girl is left behind. Absolute Saturn Girl, right, is left behind here. And she's told by the voice of Darkseid, you were not to engage with Superman. You disobeyed me, Saturn Girl. And he says, you will return to me. You will gather my legion. There is another that could endanger my plans, one that you must protect. And she just says, of course, Darkseid is. And like some scene from like Drag Me to Hell, she's literally pulled into the world itself and whisked back to the absolute universe. And so at that point, you have the conversation between Superman and Time Trapper Doomsday. Now, Superman doesn't really know whether his mom's actually alive, but the reality here is Time Trapper is just like, we don't have time to worry about her. There are far more important things going on. And he says, I cannot go on this journey with you. After we last fought, I returned to the future and found Darkseid's Legion waiting for me. They tortured me for information on you, and I barely escaped and returned to your watchtower looking for help. My allies stayed there while I went to find you. They need my help, but my goal now is to distract the Legion as you travel ahead. And he's taken to Smallville. Now, what Time Trapper had done, right, what Doomsday had done here is he had literally carved out a moment from Smallville's history and removed it from the multiverse, right? Almost kind of like taking a single M&M from a bag and just sitting it over there. And so now it's just been here this entire time. And that's where Superman's just like Smallville, but it's not my Smallville. It hasn't looked like this since I was a kid. And the question that he asks is, where are we, right? And the response, years ago, I created a pocket timeline outside the known multiverse. It was perfect for hiding an important part of your story. Someone from a different era that I knew could help us with the challenges ahead. And that's the revelation. The person who's here is Superboy Prime, right? Superboy Prime is back. Now, one of the things to keep in mind here is that the last we saw him was at the end of his fight with basically Darkest Night. And he was just kind of whisked back to what seemed to basically be his universe, right? To at least something resembling Earth Prime. Now, here's a funny thing about this, right? A lot of people out there, I think, are aware of Superboy Prime. And for those people who aren't, DC actually gives us a great explanation here. Joshua Williamson, he does a fantastic job, right? You kind of get this little bit of a backstory, and I'll fill in the gaps for those of you guys who are unfamiliar or at least need some measure of a refresher. But Superboy Prime says he was always my favorite superhero, and not just because we shared a name, Clark Kent. I used to pretend I had powers just like his, and that one day we would team up. But then the crisis happened. I got my chance to be Superman for real. It was a dream come true until it became a nightmare. I lost everything, my family, my friends, my whole world, and I got angry. I made some mistakes. Instead of following in Superman's footsteps, I became his archenemy. Eventually, I was given a redemption arc, and I used it to help save Superman, and I sacrificed myself to stop some lame Batman ripoff, or so I thought, because I woke up in a new timeline made just for me, one where everything I lost was returned to me, my friends and family, and my powers. I used them to be a hero, but there was still one thing that I always wanted, a team up with Superman. And of course, in that moment, Superman's like, who are you talking to? Right? And he's like, well, I mean, I'm talking to you, right? You can trust me, Clark, right? This time, we're gonna save the future together. Now, here's a couple things to understand about Superboy Prime and kind of what he's talking about for those of you guys who, again, are a little unfamiliar here. Superman Prime, or Superboy Prime rather, comes from Earth Prime. Earth Prime was a pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths universe that was designed to be our world, the real world, and that Clark Kent was just a kid who read comic books. So he was literally reading the stories of characters who existed in the main DC universe, having no idea that they actually existed in an alternate reality. Now, when the original Crisis on Infinite Earths event happened, and when he originally gained his powers, because of the fact that Krypton, in his reality, which seemingly existed, was destroyed by the sun instead of exploding, there was no kryptonite for him to be weak to. Not only that, he's not really weak to magic in the same way. And so when he showed up in the Crisis event, he fought alongside everybody else, and of course, the Anti-Monitor was defeated, the day was saved. What DC did is they shuffled him off to a paradise dimension. And the original intention of the story, right, from like George Perez and Marv Wolfman back in the day, was that he was going to basically be carted off, right, never to be seen or heard from again. That the paradise dimension was essentially heaven, for lack of a better word. When Jeff Johns wrote Infinite Crisis and Superboy Prime came back, son. The idea behind his character is that in the Paradise Dimension, he was watching the main DC universe itself and came to become disillusioned with superheroes because he grew up reading about superheroes in an era where the good guys were the good guys, the bad guys were the bad guys, good guys fought the bad guys, and the good guys won, the day was saved. Game over. But now, in the post-crisis landscape, kind of a meta-commentary, you started to see the rise of anti-heroes. The lines between good guys and bad guys were becoming ever more blurred until there were times where you couldn't really see the difference. And so this guy showed up in Infinite Crisis and literally all hell broke loose. There's a point in this story when he faces off against, Young Justice, the Teen Titans, and the Justice League. And he's like, man, son, you better come strong, bro. Son. He put the hurt on everybody. Then he gets like trapped in the Speed Force, and then somehow he constructs a suit inside the Speed Force that allows him to like basically hold on to solar energy and just keep himself amplified. And so then like he makes it out of the Speed Force and just starts demolishing everybody again. And then he shows up in stuff like Sinestro Corps War and like Blackest Night, and there's like the 3 boot from Final Crisis. But the bigger point is this, right? This dude is a hoss. Superboy Prime is amazing, and it's so dope to see that he's back. But here's the thing, right? Kind of focusing on the story, yet again, I'm sorry I'm so excited, people. I'm sorry I'm so excited, but it is an exciting time to see his return. Superman's initial response to Superboy Prime is like, you killed people, right? Now, here's the thing. Because Superboy Prime is from the real world, that's kind of his original origin, he's almost like you or I being thrown into the main DC universe. And he talks that way. He's like, hey, that was at least 2 reboots ago, right? The New 52 and like DC Rebirth, right? And he's like, and besides, if everyone that I killed has been brought back from the dead since then, did I really kill him at all? And that's where Superman's like, what's the meaning of this time trapper, right? You saved me from that evil Saturn girl to bring me to him? And the response to Time Trapper is like, Superboy Prime is an anomaly outside of known time and space. Darkseid's Legion will not be prepared for him. You both have experience with the Legion, but while you will see familiar faces and hesitate to do what needs to be done, Superboy Prime will not. And that's where Superman kind of picks up on the idea of, okay, so Time Trapper's obviously not going to stay here. And he doesn't, right? He's like, I'm needed somewhere else. And even if I was going to stay here, it would be a bad idea. Because if Darkseid got a hold of me, then at that point, he can just kind of control all of history. He just rewrites the entire history of the multiverse, and there's nothing you can do to stop him. And so at that point, you just have Superman and Superboy Prime. And Superman's just like, you know, how do we get to the 31st century without the Time Trapper? And Superboy's like, I'm glad you asked. And just starts punching at the walls of reality, right? And Superman's like, what are you doing? And he's like, punching time and space, dude. The time stream's being watched, so we need to take a different route to get to the 31st century. This place isn't even real, some pocket universe or blah, blah, blah. Easy peasy. Come on, get Silver Age with me. I love the conversation because that's what he did in Infinite Crisis, right? He punched the Paradise Dimension. He punched reality. It was one of these crazy moments in DC. The idea that he punched reality had these ripple effects across the entirety of the universe. So the idea was like, that's how the original Jason Todd came back. DC used it as a meta commentary to kind of say that these shock waves were making changes to the universe, and it's how they just kind of started shifting reality and so on and so forth. Hence the reason why Crisis on Infinite Earths kills the multiverse, Infinite Crisis brings it back, Final Crisis makes the heroes aware of it. And so once you have Superboy Prime and Superman just kind of jumping into the fabric of reality itself, Superboy Prime's just like, there we go. Right? As soon as we get to the future, our priority is finding Booster Gold. And Superman's just like, who in the hell is Booster Gold? And he should know who Booster is. Everybody knows who Booster is. And that's the response to Superboy Prime, right? Time really is messed up. If you don't know who Booster Gold is, then it means time's screwed up. Right? Now, Booster Gold, for those of you guys who don't know, is kind of like the ultimate con man, but he's the guy you love. I don't know if I would call him a con man per se, but basically he was like a janitor, if I remember correctly. He was not any kind of a superhero in the future, but he basically used technology to jump back to the present day and then lied about being a superhero from the future. And his goal was to like always be a member of the Justice League, which ultimately he got the invite from Superman. So Superman knows who Booster Gold is. The fact that he doesn't shows that time has really been screwed up here. And so that's why Superboy Prime says, a lot of people think Booster Gold was a joke, but if you really pay attention, he's one of the greatest superheroes of all time, and we need to save him. And so Superman says, we're heading into a dangerous situation, Prime. Why are you acting like none of this is a big deal? And Prime just says, because I already know how this story is going to end. We'll get to the future, we'll find Booster Gold, but we'll be interrupted by Darkseid's Legion. They'll outnumber us and basically beat the brakes off us, and our backs will be up against the wall. And just as we're about to eat our lunch, not 1, not 2, not 3, but all the different legions from a bunch of different possible futures will show up in this massive 2-page spread and save the day. We'll all team up and defeat Darkseid's Legion and Darkseid himself. And he's like, trust me, it's gonna be epic. The problem is, when they get there, nothing's what Superboy Prime expected. The ending is not what he expected it to be, because there's signs of this massive war in the 31st century, and everyone's dead. Like, all the Legion of Superheroes are killed here, and Superman is just like, literally sees his reality's version of Saturn Girl. She's dead, just laying there. And that's where Prime is like, God, they took out Saturn Girl, and that's like 3 dead colossal boys. They're really going for shock value. And he says, Superman, whatever's happening in your present day is making this your future. This is the 31st century. It's your 31st century. And he's like, you spent time with the Legion of Superheroes before when you were Superboy. Saturn Girl, Lightning Lad, and Cosmic Boy, they were fans like me, and they just wanted to meet you. But instead, they showed you a future that was full of hope, a beacon of what the world could be. It was like a cheat code. They showed you that no matter how hard things got in your time, it was all worth it, and that the future was safe with the Legion. And he says, and now it's all gone. The fight with all the different legions against Darkseid's army must have been so cool. I wish I could have seen it. And at that moment, Superman's like, you're enjoying this. All these individuals who are here who've been killed, you really are the same guy you always were. But he's like, no. I simply just mean to say, who doesn't love a fun story with a bunch of punching in it, twists and turns? But killing this many characters is a lot, even for me. And Superman's just like, I mean, these were friends. They were my friends. They weren't characters in some book that you read somewhere. What did Time Trapper mean when he said, you'd be able to do what I could not? And that's where Prime's like, I mean, I got a redemption arc. Remember? I mean, I basically became a good guy. And that's where Superman's like, he meant that you could kill them if you needed to, right? You are willing to kill where I am not, that you could kill Darkseid's Legion. And that's where the two of them are confronted out of nowhere, right? When they're told, the war is over and we lost. We all lost. All that's left to do is bury our dead. So it's his reality's version, right? The main DC Universe version of Cosmic Boy, right? Being able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's where they're kind of surprised to see him, right? They're like, Superman, like, holy, like, you're here, right? And the question is asked, like, what happened here? Are you the only survivor? And he's told, right, follow me, right? The Legionnaire network is down, so we just simply have to walk. We have to do this the old-fashioned way. And he ends up meeting all these other members of the Legion. Not everybody. Most all the Legion is obliterated. So what you're seeing here is a skeleton crew, a ragtag group, the survivors, right? And he's even told, we managed to hide away a few Legionnaires in a secure location, but Gold Lantern, Kinetics, Polar Boy, and I decided to stay behind to keep an eye on Darkseid's army. And that's where the question is asked, like, what about this psycho, right? Like, why is he here? The last time I saw that dude, he was trying to kill us all. But of course, they're clearly referring to Superboy Prime. But at the end of the day, this is one of the other cool things that goes on. Cosmic Boy says, okay, we need both of them if we're going to stage a counterattack. And here, Brainiac has a plan. And Prime asks, right, which Brainiac are you talking about? And that's where he's told, during the Legion War, we managed to catch one of Darkseid's forces. This Brainiac is not from our timelines. He's from a world created by Darkseid. Every cell is infused with his presence. So this is absolute Brainiac, right? And the statement's made, we've been able to hack this Brainiac systems just enough to learn that they are using the Old Time Institute as their home base. And if we lobotomize it, we can learn even more. But the reality here is this, right? When Starman comes into play, he says, the future's dead. Hope is gone. Nothing we ever did mattered. That all those lives we saved them for this torture. His Legion, they're like us, but they're not Superman. They enjoyed hurting us, and it was fun for them. Where you come from, they never had you to show them the way, to inspire them. They only had Darkseid. So what this really shows, and this could just be Joshua Williamson spoiling the hell out of what Jason Aaron is doing over on Absolute Superman, but basically saying Absolute Superman seemingly never becomes the Superman that we all know and love. And truthfully, we don't expect him to. The whole idea behind the Absolute Universe is that it is a universe created by Darkseid and molded the way that Darkseid wants reality to be. So it's dark and twisted and broken. So Hope can kind of flourish a little bit, but not enough that you would see the kind of superheroes that you would see here. It would take these superheroes going there in order to fix the absolute universe and make it into a better place, which I'm willing to bet is probably something that's going to happen. But Starman continues on, right? We're just kids pretending to be superheroes. They are the Legion now, and there's only one future, and it's Darkseid's. But that's where Superman kind of makes his speech. It's the thing about Superman that inspires, right? He says, Starman, Tom, my old friend, you and I have had a few adventures together in your time and mine. You're part of a long line of heroes, a legacy. And he says, a legacy that goes back to before me, a part of our past, present, and future. I know the Legion started because you were inspired by me, but I was inspired by you, by the Legion. You've earned your role as the future's heroes countless times without my help. The future's unwritten. We still have a chance. Even now, in your darkest hour, every bit of light is capable of defeating that darkness. And the statement's made, right? They outnumber us by a lot, right? Their energy is running out. Gold Lantern's ring is running out of power. And so the response of Superman is, we have to find Booster Gold, right? And we stop this horror from ever happening, because if we find Booster Gold, we can manipulate time and we can jump back to when this war first started and save everyone who died. And so that's where he's told. They're holding this Booster Gold at the Time Institute. Normally time travel is illegal, but Darkseid's Legion has been using it to jump around the timelines, doing their master's bidding. And so the question's asked by Superboy Prime, why are they even keeping Booster alive, right? Why not just kill him? And the response of Superman, there's only one way to find out, right? Like, we go there and we figure out what that answer is. And he says, but we have to be cautious, right? Because this could all be a trap to lure you guys out, the remnants of the Legion, destroy what's left. But in the middle of all of this, Superboy Prime has this kind of realization. He's like, hey, so I happen to think about a major plot hole here. If Cosmic Boy has magnetic powers, why was he using his hands on the shovel to dig those graves? That doesn't make any sense. And that's when he immediately manifests and you find out he's Chameleon, but he is the absolute universe version of Chameleon, a twisted evil version of his counterpart from the Legion of Superheroes. Now, something that I hope you guys are kind of starting to notice here, that you guys are kind of starting to pick up here, in a lot of ways, this kind of feels like the invasion of Earth 3, with the exception of the Earth 3 Alfred Pennyworth, who was a bad guy, and possessing the Mother Box at the end of Trinity War. It all kind of flies and falls in the same way. Evil versions of DC's characters who are manifesting in a variety of ways. It's kind of giving Forever Evil vibes, which is pretty dope. But again, right, like Chameleon says, so much for the element of surprise, Superman, and I gotta tell you, you're making this too easy, right? We don't want to kill you, we just want to break your spirit, because if you lose hope, Darkseid will be unstoppable. And because of the fact that Chameleon, given his namesake, you probably figured out, he has the ability to shapeshift, he turns into the Legion of Superheroes version of Chameleon, the one that Superman is the most familiar with, as a way to kind of mess with his head. And it actually works. And this is what Time Trapper was talking about, right? That in these moments, these small moments, when Superman comes across people that he knows, he's going to hesitate. And in this moment of hesitation, it could have cost him his life. But Superboy Prime steps up and just cold cocks this guy and sends him flying and just kind of starts tearing through everyone, to the point that Superman shows up and just says, Darkseid, show yourself, right? You want to fight me? I'm here. But that's when he arrives to where Booster Gold is at. And one of the things that we find out here, and it's why I brought it up in the first place, Booster Gold had sent Validus into the past as a way to kind of warn Superman that the idea was that if Validus, a member of the Fatal Five, had jumped back to the present day, or these different points, or at least been sent back to these different points in Superman's timeline, at the very least, he would come to investigate. And the hope of Booster Gold is that Superman would do exactly that. But Superman never did, because for any number of reasons, the timeline being messed with, the idea of what was happening in the universe at that point in time, he just kind of never got around to it. But even his own memories of what had happened with Validus had basically been altered or modified almost immediately after his original battle when he was Superboy, and the whole idea of the Legion of Superheroes, right? Again, that's all part of the Summer of Superman special one-shot. But the bigger point is this: now that he's here, they have the ability to get Booster Gold out of here. But here's the thing, what Booster Gold has to say is fairly ominous, because he says, you shouldn't be here, Superman. You don't know what I've seen, what Darkseid has planned. And he says, we cannot beat him this time. And the question's asked by Superman, like, what happened? Right? And Booster Gold fills him in. He says, I wondered why no one came to find me. And I thought maybe I just didn't matter enough. It started when the new Justice League was forming. You invited me to join the team yourself. And I remember that moment in time, that it was a special one, but something changed. After Darkseid died and the prelude to the launch of the Absolute Universe, I volunteered to go into the rift created in his wake. I had the right kind of chronal energy to make the trip to the other world safely, at least according to Mr. Terrific. But he was wrong. I didn't go to another world. I went to the future. Skeets was gone, so I had no way to get back here because time travel wasn't an option anymore. And he says, I managed to stay ahead of them for about 2 years while they waged war with the different legions from across time. But I couldn't just hide. I saw the good legions losing and I simply had to help. And that's how they caught me. And that's where Superman's question is like, you've been here for 2 years. He's like, no. That was before I got here, before I was captured. Honestly, I don't know how long I've been here. I have no idea how much time has passed since they captured me and locked me in this place. And that's where Superman's told, you have no home to go back to. Because the statement was, well, I mean, we got to get you back home, Booster Gold, but there's nowhere for him to go. Because now Darkseid's Legion shows up here. And here's the crazy thing, right? He's told by Imra, the future is Darkseid's, and it's only a matter of time before the past and the present are his as well. Time Trapper thought he was cute grabbing you, but he just set you up to fail, and you know it too. My powers can sense it inside your mind, the doubt, the worry, the burden. But don't worry, right? We're not going to kill you because our master wants you to watch as everything ends. And Superman's response, the only thing I'm worried about is what I'm going to do when I get my hands on Darkseid. Only for Superman to be shot in the back. And literally the Legion goes after everybody else, right? Goes after Booster Gold. And then Superman is immediately hit again. And that's where this voice comes out of nowhere and says, that speech about legacy and the future was inspiring, Superman, but your heart blinds you to the truth. We lost. And you know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Because Superboy Prime has the Man of Steel choked up. Once a villain, always a villain. Superboy Prime, the villain, is back. Yes! With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.